welcome to Thursday. And we are starting a new chapter in Luke 17. And the next few verses that we're going to look at, the next section, it seems a little random. And so they're not really connected to what was the previous or even subsequent passages. But what scholars think is that Luke gathers fragments of Jesus' teaching, and that they were too valuable to be lost, and so he puts them in there. So it's kind of like if you are doing a memoir for a family member and you thought, oh, don't forget about that story, right? Or don't forget about this. And it might not be connected to the other stories, but it's just these things are important to add. And so that's what was happening here. And so the three things that we're looking at are sin, faith, and duty. So we're going to break those up. And we're going to look at sin today. And we're going to read verse 1 through 4. Jesus said to his disciples, again he's teaching to his disciples, things that cause people to stumble are bound to come, but woe to anyone through whom they come. It would be better for them to be thrown into the sea with the millstone around their neck than to cause one of these little ones to stumble. So watch yourselves. If your brother or sister sins against you, rebuke them, and if they repent, forgive them. Even if they sin against you 7 times in a day, and 7 times come back to you saying, I repent, you must forgive them. All right, so what was happening here? So the first thing is the religious leaders at that time were in danger of using their wealth and their influence and their position of leading their brothers astray. So instead of, as people in leadership or in ministry or in a position of influence, our job is to look after the vulnerable and the weak and to bring them closer to Jesus, right? And instead, they were doing the opposite. The religious leaders were doing the opposite, and they were in danger of actually keeping people away from God because they were so focused on the law and they were so focused on looking good and doing the right things that it was actually keeping people away from coming to get closer to God. So that's what the problem here. So in contrast, what we as a people should be doing is we should be bringing people, those that are vulnerable and those that are in sin, we should be approaching them with mercy and with love and humility and coming alongside them and coming to them and saying, oh, I see this thing that you have, this thing that's pulling you back or that you're struggling with. And how can you use that to gently restore them back to faith instead of saying, you are too sinful, get out of here. And that was the way the Pharisees were viewing the vulnerable and those who are struggling with sin. So what is our approach? So if an offender repents, we need to forgive them. We need to welcome them back into the fold. Again, like we looked at in Luke 15 about the prodigals. And so what is our attitude towards those who aren't following God? What is our attitude on those who maybe know God at one point, but then have walked away? What's our attitude? Is our attitude to do everything to restore them? Or is our attitude to point out what they're doing wrong and saying, look at you and what you're doing and you're bad? But instead, we should have the opposite, one of humility and one of love, that we can welcome them back instead of pushing them out. So let's do that. Let's welcome people in instead of pushing them out. All right, have a good day. See you tomorrow.